I'm going to keep this short because I recorded this already, but I didn't have the mic turned on. So, hello friends. Today I want to talk to you about WWDC 2020, which happened yesterday. WWDC is Apple's developer-focused conference, and that's generally where they talk about new software things in general. A couple of interesting things that I took away from it that I personally found interesting was, number one, the Apple Pencil got a little bit more useful with the introduction of something called Scribble. Scribble is pretty much a handwriting to text conversion that allows you to enter text directly inside text fields with the pencil without having to use the on-screen keyboard. So that's interesting because previously Apple had something called the Apple Newton, which was sort of a tablet that's the main entry was through a stylus. It didn't work out very well. It kind of has a cult following, but for the most part, you don't see or hear about it in the mainstream. And the other major announcement that everyone was expecting is Apple is transitioning from Intel over to their own custom ARM-based SoC. The reason for that to be interesting from a software developer's perspective, it's interesting because if you have applications already written and out there in the wild, you're going to have to recompile it in order to have it work natively, which they've quoted a couple of days of work, but that never happens in real life. It'll probably be a couple of weeks, maybe even a month to translate anything that's not a trivial application. So recompiling, hopefully everything works out for you, but you never know. We've seen how that worked out for most people with Swift, right? What I'm personally interested in was the fact that there was specific mention of Docker and virtualization. So that leads me to believe that they're working with Docker in order to get a lot of the containers and everything to work pretty flawlessly across the Intel and ARM processor spectrum. Docker already announced in a previous blog post, I think from April 2019, that they support multi-architecture builds of images. So that's going to help in this case as well. Having worked with ARM-specific device, it can be a pain if you don't have ARM images for whatever image you're working on or whatever piece of software you're working on. There's also something called Rosetta 2, which is, as implied, a new version of Rosetta. So the old version of Rosetta translated the application from PowerPC onto Intel. This one, the Rosetta 2, translates the Intel instructions into the ARM instructions at install time. Hopefully there's not a big performance hit in that case, but that's to be seen. They did do some demos with that game, was it Tomb Raider or Shadow of the Tomb Raider, which ran, as we can tell, pretty decently, and a couple of CAD applications as well. I think it was actually, sorry, Maya, the 3D modeling application, looked like it was running okay. And then obviously Photoshop and the Adobe suite was also demoed as working pretty seamlessly. Now, there's always going to be a little bit of a performance hit, so we'll probably want to wait for Adobe to recompile their applications for the ARM-based processor. It's definitely going to take a lot longer than a couple of days for a suite that large, so they'll probably have a separate release for that, just a ARM-specific release. Another interesting revelation was that they had a Mac Mini or some sort of Mac device that was running on an A12Z processor, which is the iPad processor. So there's all sorts of implications in that alone. One of which is that the iPad is capable of running Mac OS, and the Mac OS computers, the Mac computers, are capable of running iOS. And indeed, they showed a demo of iOS applications running on the Mac. And we're gonna see interesting meld between the two. So the lines are quite blurred between the two right now. And going forward, it's going to be interesting to see where Apple takes that pretty much. We don't quite know, but they're teasing with that. Which I guess the last thing I asked for was Xcode for the iPad. That is a possibility now because we've seen tablet applications run on the Mac, so why not run Xcode on the iPad? Wouldn't that be crazy if I can actually code on the iPad, where right now I state that you can't? That would be an amazing announcement if Apple does bring that forward. So I think I got everything. That's my hot take. The other stuff, the UI, whatever, I don't really care too much about that. It always happens. And yeah, see you in the next one.